You want to know how I got my boss fired? It started when he told me to stop coming in early. So I did exactly what he said. That was his first mistake. Here's the thing about corporate types. They think they understand how things work, but they've never actually worked a day in their lives. They see someone like me coming in before dawn and think it's some kind of problem that needs fixing. What they don't realize is that guy coming in early, he's probably the only reason their fancy office runs like clockwork instead of like a daycare center during a sugar rush. Name's Michael Thompson. I'm 48, been with Phoenix Industries here in Detroit for 16 years. Before that, I did 8 years in the Navy, logistics division. You know what the Navy teaches you? Systems. Order. The importance of doing things right the first time because lives depend on it. Corporate America's a little different. Usually it's just quarterly profits that die when people screw up. But the principle's the same. Every weekday at 6:45 sharp, I was the guy who turned the damn lights on. Not metaphorically. Literally. I unlocked the doors of our 8-story building, punched in my security code, and fired up the systems that kept 450 employees from realizing how close to chaos they actually lived. HVAC humming to life, servers coming online, coffee brewing dark and strong in the break room before anyone's pickup truck even hit the parking lot. Nobody ever questioned how things were magically ready when they strolled in at 9 a.m. They just assumed it happened automatically, like some kind of corporate fairy tale. By 7 o'clock, I had the market reports printed and sorted, compliance dashboards updated with overnight data, and that temperamental projector in conference room B calibrated just right so it wouldn't cast weird shadows during presentations. Same routine for 16 years running. Senior Operations Manager, that's my official title, but my real job was being the foundation that kept this whole operation from collapsing into expensive chaos. And get this, I didn't do it because anyone ordered me to. Did it because it needed doing, and I was the guy who knew how to do it right. You learn that in the service. Mission first, ego last. I kept what I called my foundation folder on the secure company drive, password protected and updated every quarter. 23 critical protocols that happened between 6:45 and 9 o'clock a.m. Everything from unlocking vendor access doors to running the backup systems that prevented the kind of data losses that put companies on the evening news. My mornings were precision operations. Check the overnight server logs for errors, flag suspicious security alerts, test the building's main systems, refill the supplies that different departments burned through like ammunition. Small tasks, boring tasks, absolutely mission-critical tasks that nobody else even knew existed. I drove my 18 F-150 to work every morning, parked in the same spot near the maintenance entrance, walked the same efficient route through the building. Had my routine down to a science. Read the Wall Street Journal with my black coffee at 6:30, systems online by 7 o'clock, watched the parking lot gradually fill up with people whose successful day had already been set up for them. For 16 years, nobody bothered me about it. Management left me alone because everything worked. I came in when I needed to come in, did what needed doing, and stayed clear of the office politics that seemed to consume everyone else's energy. Perfect arrangement. Then Brandon Wilson walked through our doors. Corporate sent him down from the main office like a guided missile with an MBA and daddy issues. See, Kenneth Wilson owns Phoenix Industries, and Brandon's his boy. Fresh from Northwestern Business School with a head full of theories about synergy and optimization and all those other buzzwords that sound impressive in meetings but crash and burn in the real world. 35 years old, never spent a day actually running anything, never changed a printer cartridge, never had to explain to an angry client why their presentation crashed because someone forgot to test the equipment beforehand. But hey, he had that diploma and that last name, so obviously he was management material. First week I gave him space. New managers need time to figure out they don't know everything, and smart ones usually ask questions before they start changing things. But Brandon wasn't here to learn our system. He was here to fix problems that didn't exist, using solutions nobody had asked for. Day one, he called what he termed an alignment meeting, where he used the word synergize so many times I started keeping count in my notebook. 17 times in 45 minutes, in case you're wondering. Day two, he wanted to refresh the energy flow by moving the only working industrial copier from the second floor to the fourth floor. Day three, he asked me, with a straight face, why our financial dashboards didn't have social media integration features. That's when it hit me. We weren't dealing with a manager. We were dealing with a business school case study that had somehow escaped into the real world and convinced itself it was qualified to run operations. Still, I kept my head down those first few weeks. Let him rearrange his ergonomic standing desk and critique the printer paper orientation like it was somehow affecting our quarterly numbers. Let him take credit for the morning reports that mysteriously appeared in his inbox every day like corporate fairy dust. Here's what I figured. As long as he didn't mess with my foundation protocols, the machine would keep running smooth. He could play manager all he wanted in his corner office. I'd keep doing the real work and everyone would be happy. Simple arrangement. But Brandon had other ideas. It was a Thursday morning around 7:30, and I was checking the server room cooling systems. Something I did every week to prevent the kind of catastrophic failures that cost companies six figures in downtime and make IT directors update their resumes real quick. The server room was my domain. Climate-controlled, organized, humming along like a well-tuned engine. That's when I heard expensive shoes clicking down the hallway behind me. Italian leather, from the sound of it. Probably cost more than most people make in a week. I turned around, and there was Brandon, leaning against the doorframe with that polished smile corporate types practice in bathroom mirrors. "Hey, Michael," he said, voice smooth as a recruitment poster. "Got a minute to chat in my office?" Now, I've been around long enough to know that when a manager wants to chat, it's usually because someone's about to get blamed for something they didn't do, or told to stop doing something that actually works. But orders are orders, so I followed him down the hall. His office looked like a business school catalog threw up in there. Motivational posters about teamwork and innovation, a whiteboard covered in buzzword diagrams, and one of those executive stress balls that probably cost more than a decent wrench set. He didn't offer me a seat, just leaned against his desk like he was posing for a corporate leadership headshot. "So," he started, adjusting his tie, "few people have mentioned you come in pretty early." I nodded. "Yes, sir." He laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was one of those sounds people make when they're about to tell you something you're definitely not going to like. "Look, you're obviously dedicated, which is great. Really appreciate that work ethic." I waited. In the Navy, you learn when to talk and when to listen. This was clearly listening time. The pause stretched out while he figured out how to dress up what he really wanted to say. "But here's the thing," he continued, smoothing an imaginary wrinkle from his already perfect shirt. "Showing up before dawn, it kind of makes the rest of the team look bad. Creates some dynamics." Dynamics. There's a word that should make any working man nervous. When management starts talking about dynamics, it usually means someone who actually knows how to do their job is making someone else look incompetent by comparison. "Let's maybe stick to arriving at 9 with everyone else," Brandon said, flashing that practice smile again. "Team cohesion, you know? Consistency is key for optimal workflow." And there it was, the management consultant special. Fix something that isn't broken by breaking something that works perfectly. I looked at him for a long moment, processing what he'd just said. This guy wanted me to stop doing the job that kept his entire operation running smooth, because it made other people feel bad about their own work ethic. In the military, we had a saying, if it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid. But apparently in corporate America, if it works and makes people feel inadequate, then it's a problem that needs solving. "Copy that," I said finally. He seemed pleased, like he'd just solved some complex leadership challenge instead of creating a disaster waiting to happen. "Great. Glad we're on the same page, Michael. I knew you'd understand the bigger picture." The bigger picture. Right. The bigger picture where the foundation of his operation stops working because it might hurt someone's feelings. I walked out of his office with the same steady pace I'd used for 16 years, but something had definitely shifted. He wanted consistency, team cohesion. He was about to get more consistency than he knew what to do with. Because here's what Brandon didn't understand about systems, and this is important. You don't notice the foundation until it's gone. You don't appreciate the guy who comes in early until the day he doesn't. You don't realize how much invisible work keeps your world spinning until that work suddenly becomes very, very visible by its absence. I spent that evening at home, sitting in my recliner with a beer and thinking about what Brandon had just asked me to do. He wanted me to stop being the guy who made sure everything worked, because being good at my job was somehow unfair to people who weren't as good at theirs. Well, if that's what he wanted, That's exactly what he was going to get. Military precision applied to corporate compliance. I would follow his orders to the letter, with the kind of attention to detail that would make a drill sergeant proud. And Brandon Wilson, MBA from Northwestern, son of the company owner, was about to learn why you should never mess with a system you don't understand, especially when that system has been working flawlessly for 16 years. Monday morning was going to be very interesting. Monday morning, 8:52 a.m., I sat in my F-150 in the parking lot, engine idling, watching our building through the windshield like I was on surveillance detail. Strange feeling being out there when the sun was already up and the day shift was rolling in. Normally by then, I'd have completed my foundation checklist and would be on my second cup of coffee, reading market reports while the building hummed along like a well-oiled machine. But not today. Today, I was following orders, new orders, Brandon's orders. At exactly 9 o'clock a.m., I stepped out of the truck, badge clipped to my shirt, tool bag over my shoulder, walking with the measured pace of a man who follows instructions to the letter. The lobby was already buzzing with people, fluorescent lights still flickering as they warmed up, printers blinking those familiar error codes, coffee machines cycling through their startup routines without anyone to monitor them. Here's the thing about being the foundation. When you're gone, everything starts settling, and not in a good way. I didn't fix any of it. Walked right past the HVAC control panel that was flashing a ventilation error. Ignored the server room door that should have been checked an hour ago for overnight alerts. Took the scenic route to my desk, past conference rooms that still had chairs scattered from Fridays. Meetings, past dashboards displaying last week's numbers because nobody had updated the overnight data feeds. Brandon caught me near the elevators, holding his to-go coffee and wearing that same confident grin. "There's our early bird," he said. "Welcome to normal people hours." I nodded politely. "Following your guidance, sir." And that was the new game. Military precision applied to corporate compliance. No early protocols, no system checks, no foundation folder access until well after 9 o'clock a.m. If it wasn't in my official job description, it simply didn't exist in my world anymore. By 10 o'clock, you could feel it in the air. Not literally, but that subtle shift when something's off kilter. The usual Monday morning flow was missing those invisible supports. People were wandering around looking for reports that hadn't been generated, squinting at dashboards that showed stale data, checking printers that hadn't been loaded with paper over the weekend. The facilities director walked past my desk twice, frowning at his tablet, probably wondering why the building's environmental systems were running inefficiently. The compliance team was whispering near the copy machine about missing overnight reports, and somewhere down the hall, I could hear Brandon's voice getting a little tighter as he tried to explain to someone why the morning briefing materials weren't ready. I kept typing at my desk, calm as a man reading the sports page on his front porch. Because here's what I'd learned in 16 years of corporate life. I wasn't breaking any rules. I was following them exactly. And when you take the keystone out of an arch, what happens next isn't sabotage. It's just physics. Tuesday brought the first real visible cracks. The building's main HVAC system, which I normally checked at 6:50 a.m. every morning, had been running with a faulty sensor all night. By 11 o'clock, the third floor was stuffy enough that people were cracking windows in November. In Detroit. The server room temperature alarm started chirping at 2:30 p.m., and it took the IT department 3 hours to figure out why their cooling system wasn't responding to automated commands. Meanwhile, the vendor access logs showed 6 missed deliveries because nobody had unlocked the loading dock before 8 o'clock a.m. The weekly compliance briefing that legal needed for their Tuesday morning review was sitting unfinished on my desktop because compliance briefings weren't something I handled after 9 o'clock anymore. New schedule, new priorities. I started keeping detailed notes in my desk logbook. Not to build a case, just old military habit. Document everything, track patterns, identify failure points. Except this time, instead of documenting how to improve the process, I was documenting how the process was systematically falling apart. Wednesday was when Brandon started hovering. Casual questions about morning routines, wondering aloud who usually handled the vendor coordination logs, asking if I'd noticed the temperature control issues. Each question delivered with that same artificial smile, like he was conducting friendly market research instead of watching his department slowly melt down around him. "Michael, quick question," he said, appearing at my desk like a bad habit. "The morning dashboard updates seem to be running behind schedule. Any idea who typically handles those?" I looked up from my screen, maintaining professional eye contact. That would be me, sir, during my regular working hours. Right, but the numbers seem to be lagging a bit. Could you maybe be a little more proactive? Take some initiative here? I nodded slowly, like I was seriously considering his request. I follow my documented responsibilities, Brandon. If operational priorities have changed, I'd appreciate written guidance on the new procedures and timeline expectations. His smile flickered like a dying fluorescent bulb. Corporate types hate it when you ask for written instructions, because then there's a paper trail showing exactly who ordered what and when things went sideways. Sure. Right. We'll get that clarified through proper channels. He walked away, and I went back to my work. Professional, polite, and completely by the book. The kind of employee any competent manager should appreciate. Except Brandon was starting to realize that by the book wasn't going to save him from the chaos building around his perfectly styled head. Thursday morning, my phone started buzzing at 6:15 a.m., Brandon's name lighting up the screen over and over like a smoke detector with a dying battery. I let it ring. My shift didn't start until 9 o'clock, per management directive, and I wasn't about to violate company policy by working unauthorized overtime. That would be unprofessional. When I walked into the building at 9 o'clock sharp, the damage was immediately obvious. Elevator out of service because the monthly maintenance verification hadn't been logged properly. Main conference room locked down because the security system reset hadn't been completed. Half the building's printers displaying paper jam warnings that would have been cleared hours ago if someone had been there to handle the overnight error reports. But here's the beautiful part. None of it was my fault. I was just doing exactly what I'd been told to do. Brandon was standing near the reception desk when I walked in, shirt wrinkled, looking like a man who'd spent the morning trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. He spotted me and practically jogged over, which was pretty entertaining to watch in those expensive Italian shoes. "Michael, thank God you're here. We've got a serious situation with the morning reports. Kenneth's asking where the quarterly comparison sheets are, and I can't locate them anywhere in the system." I set down my coffee and pulled up my computer screen with the same calm I'd used for 16 years. "Which quarterly sheets would those be, sir?" "The ones that go out Thursday mornings. The vendor analysis with cost, projections, and compliance cross-references." His voice was getting higher, that executive composure cracking around the edges like cheap paint. I nodded thoughtfully, like I was accessing some deep database in my head. "Those are generated from the Foundation folder protocols. I typically run those Thursday morning at 6:45, but per your guidance, I'm maintaining standard business hours now." Brandon stared at me like I'd just explained nuclear physics using hand puppets. Foundation folder? And that's when I knew he was in serious trouble. The man had been taking credit for reports he didn't even know existed, generated by systems he'd never heard of, from processes he'd just ordered me to stop running. It was like watching someone realize they'd been driving a car by remote control, and the guy with the remote had just walked away. Friday was Judgment Day. Not for me, for Brandon's shiny new management philosophy. The weekly executive briefing was scheduled for 8 o'clock a.m., and by 7:45, I was settling into my desk with my Wall Street Journal and a fresh cup of black coffee. Through the conference room glass, I could see Brandon frantically shuffling papers and jabbing at his laptop like it might suddenly produce miracles. My phone rang at 7:52. Brandon, again. This time I answered on the second ring. "Michael, I need you in the conference room right now. The morning brief is missing critical data and Kenneth's asking questions I can't answer." "On my way, sir." I took my time walking down the hall, briefcase in hand. Inside the conference room, it looked like the aftermath of a corporate disaster. Kenneth Wilson, the CEO and Brandon's father, was sitting at the head of the table with the expression of a man watching his quarterly profits evaporate in real time. Patricia Williams from Strategy was taking notes, which was never a good sign for whoever was being discussed. The other department heads were checking their phones and trying to blend into the furniture. "Brandon," Kenneth said without looking up from his tablet, "explain to me why we're missing the vendor analysis, the compliance brief, and the overnight systems report." Brandon's face had turned the color of old concrete. "There's been some workflow disruption, process optimization challenges that we're actively addressing through systematic review. Pure corporate word salad. When managers start talking like that, it means they're drowning and hoping nobody notices." Kenneth's eyes shifted to me. Michael, you've been handling these reports for how long? 16 years, sir. Daily Foundation protocols documented and updated quarterly. And this week, I opened my briefcase and pulled out my Foundation folder. Clean, organized, professionally maintained. This week I've been following new scheduling guidance from Brandon. Standard business hours only, no early arrival protocols. The silence in that room was so thick you could have used it for insulation. Kenneth held out his hand, and I passed him the folder. 23 pages of detailed procedures, timestamps, system checkpoints, and cross-departmental dependencies. Everything that happened between 6:45 and 9:00 a.m. to keep Phoenix Industries running like the precision operation it had been for 16 years. Kenneth read for maybe 30 seconds, then looked at Brandon with the expression of a father who just realized his son had been playing with matches near the gas tank. "You told him to stop doing this?" Brandon's mouth opened and closed like he was trying to breathe underwater. "I was addressing team dynamic issues. The early arrival was creating workplace tension. Team dynamic issues." Kenneth's voice was flat as a government audit report. "You shut down our Foundation protocols because of team dynamics. Here's the thing about family businesses. When the old man built the company from scratch, he understands the difference between what looks important and what actually is important. And Kenneth Wilson hadn't built Phoenix Industries by worrying about people's feelings getting hurt." Patricia Williams cleared her throat. "Michael, how long would it take to restore normal operations?" I checked my watch with military precision. If I start Monday morning at 6:45, we could have systems back online by Tuesday. Full protocols restored by Wednesday. Kenneth nodded once, then turned to Brandon. "You and I need to have a conversation. In my office, now." As the meeting broke up, Patricia approached me with something that might have been a smile on anyone else's face. "Hell of a demonstration, Michael. Just following orders, ma'am." She nodded slowly. "We'll be talking about a promotion next week. Director level, I think. Someone who clearly understands what foundation actually means around here." Monday morning, I was back in the parking lot at 6:40, watching the sunrise paint the Phoenix Industries building gold and red. Brandon's BMW was nowhere to be seen. Word was he'd been transferred to special projects, which in corporate speak means exile to a windowless office where bad ideas go to die quietly. I walked through those doors at 6:45 sharp, badge ready, Foundation folder updated, ready to turn the lights on again. Not because anyone was making me, but because that's what you do when you understand the mission. And after 16 years of doing it quietly, I was finally doing it with the recognition and authority the job deserved. You want to know how I got my boss fired? Simple. I did exactly what he told me to do. Sometimes the best way to show people what you're worth is to give them exactly what they ask for. Mission accomplished.